episode 67 with Bryan Frasher. This was a great conversation. I learned a lot, very inspirational. Bryan is a great manager. He works for Red Light Management and looks after the careers of Craig Morgan, Cadillac 3, among many others, Christian Bush as well. And I really love this conversation. There's lots of great history about starting off in the industry, working your way through from being a musician to road managing, all the way up through radio promotion, up right into management. There's a great story here. I know you're going to really enjoy this one for sure. Also, don't forget our sponsors, Music City Canada, based out of London, Ontario. Great guys there, great pricing. They'll ship right to you. Check them out at musiccitycanada.com. Also, Morning Buzz Coffee Company. That's morningbuzzcoffee.buzz. Fantastic blends, and there are a couple of musicians that own that. I love these guys. They're doing a bang-up job. He's got these really cool mugs that just gone in. Check those out, buy those, buy some coffee, and support Morning Buzz Coffee. Also, Stickman Clothing Company, based out of Regina, Saskatchewan, and some good friends that own that particular company, and they have some cool clothing wear. Just go right to their site, check out everything they have, and they'll ship right to you as well. All right, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button and see all the upcoming podcasts with some fantastic guests coming up. And same thing, if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify or any of those great platforms, make sure you hit the like buttons and leave a comment, 5-star rating. That'd be awesome. And that helps us get up the chain a little bit. Also, all my links are available at getmypodcast.com, so you can do that. Check that out. All right, this is a fantastic podcast with Mr. Bryan Frasher. Okay, we are here with Bryan Frasher. It's nice to have you on the podcast. Sitting in lovely, sunny Are you in downtown now? Or are you outside? Are you at home in Nashville?
Well, I'm home, man. I'm in about 20 minutes south of Nashville, in a little town called Brentwood.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Nice area to be.
Yeah, it's great. It's beautiful. I've been working from home since March.
Yeah.
And I've only went down into Nashville to the office maybe, I don't know, about once a month, maybe twice a month in the summer, just for whatever various meetings we needed to do.
Yeah.
Or I might needed to meet somebody down there or something. But other than that, I've stayed within maybe a 5-6 mile radius of my house. It's been awesome. Since I was 23, 24 years old, this is the least amount of travel that I've done since then. Since I got out of college. It's crazy.
Yeah, same for me. I haven't been anywhere, and it's sort of like all my points, airline points, are disappearing.
Same. I was looking at that over the break. I'm like, oh man, I'm losing all my points. I got to use them up. And I've got, I was actually in London when things got shut down. I was over there with Cadillac 3 and Lindsay L. I was still managing her at the time.
Yeah.
And both of them were on the C2C shows, and we had just done Germany, Berlin, and we'd done Amsterdam, and I had been traveling with them. And then I hitched a ride on the band bus for the Cadillac 3. I hitched an overnight ride to London with them after Amsterdam. And we were in London about 3 days. And the whole 3 days we're there, all the discussion, are we going to cancel? What's going to happen? We had a week of stuff lined up leading into their performance at C2C. They were going to be direct support to Eric Church at O2 Arena. And it was a big look, really big look. And then on the other shows as well, the other two, Glasgow and Dublin. And it was Wednesday. The show was Friday. Wednesday night, I was actually up watching, the presidential address on COVID, how they were going to close all travel to Europe, to and from Europe. And it was like 2:00 in the morning over there. And I was watching it on my computer, sitting on the hotel room bed. And my wife called me. She said, "You guys need to get the heck out of there right now." And I said, "I'm already on the airline." And we had turned it around, and they had canceled. They told us they were canceling the next morning and all this stuff. And me and the tour manager for the band split the work, and we jumped on booking travel and ground transportation that night, had it done by like 3:30 in the morning, and we're out the door into the airport by 8:30.
Yeah.
And it was like that scene in World War Z when they're trying to get out of Israel.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And then some of the folks that didn't really see that address and didn't get up till the next day, maybe late in the morning, they were missed. They had 3 days of just terrible travel and waiting in airports for days at a time. It was terrible. So we really got out of there by the skin of our teeth. Anyway, all of that to say, I've been working from home since then.
So how do you like that? Have you got accustomed to being at home? Is it a good thing? Is it, I know for me, it's been great. Yeah.
Yeah, man, I do. I love it. My world has been flexible for years now, since 2012, and my work life. But I've always had travel. I've always had an office to go to or something like that. So there were periods where I might work from home one day a week, but I'd never had it set up right. My office. I have an office in my house, and it was really just a catch-all for everything. But since when we realized that this is we're going to be doing this for a while, just rearranged the office, got the right equipment in here, bought a better monitor, things like that, all the stuff you need.
Yeah.
So now I've got, really, I'm really happy. I don't know that I will go back to an office, actually.
Yep.
I've actually told the CFO at Redline, I said, don't count on me coming back into the office for 21, because why would I? I'm here. It's like, I got everything I need, and I can work from anywhere in the world as long as I've got my telephone and broadband service. I can do anything I need to do. And, I really enjoy it.
It's an interesting thing that's going to happen over the next year or two, is that companies like yourself, you think of all the companies where people work at home, where they can successfully work at home. Yeah. And they're looking at, why do I need like this piece of real estate downtown or with a bunch of offices and paying for all that? I guess it's good when all the wheels are running and money's all coming in, but even still, then you think of that money being saved and put towards other things. It's a big chunk of change.
100% it is. Yeah. For me, and as much as the financial end of it, which that's definitely a big consideration, big part of it. The level of distraction is greater at the office. And I've worked harder in the last 8 to 9 months and I'm a pretty much a grinder anyhow. I work all the time. My biggest problem is trying to set boundaries for myself in terms of my working all the time. Yeah. But I've had to be more conscious of that working from home. Like I'll turn it off, and I'll put a do not disturb on my phone for a certain period of time. And, but I get more done. I feel more confident not working so constantly because I can really schedule my day and do some deep work in the morning for 3 hours or so in a row. And really, I've disciplined myself for the most part. I check email only 2 to 3 times a day. I've kind of got a system worked out for that. Those are things that I never did when I was in an office. Yeah. And now I've got all that. I feel like I've got a good handle on that. And I get more done when I need to do a lot of stuff. And I get more quality work done when I need the focus and I need the ability to focus. Plus, it enabled me to. We live in a neighborhood that is connected to a series of trails and a park and all this stuff's really nice. Yeah. And I've instituted these walk and talk periods where I'll go out and I'll make all my phone calls while I'm walking. Yeah. And just make phone calls. And before you know it, I've done 4 or 5 miles. It's an hour and a half, 2 hours have gone by, and I've talked to everybody I need to talk to. And when I come home, I'm not on the phone constantly. And so it's it is what you make of it. And I feel like I feel pretty good about where it's at right now.
That's pretty good. The regiment there is really smart. And even think of the time it takes to get into work, that drive. And the drive back, that's a big amount of wasted time. And then it comes to noon, you probably go out for an hour lunch somewhere. Or the time wasted where you could do something, like you said, go out for a walk and do your talks and doing something healthy. How many times do you do something healthy while at the office, right?
It's so true what you just said. And you can be more efficient with your meetings. You can say, okay, I got 30 minutes to do this call or Zoom or whatever it might be, or an hour or whatever. You can control your life more. At least I feel like I can, and I really it takes effort for me to do that, because man, before you know it, I'm sure have the same thing. Every time you're talking to somebody, they're like, oh, well, we need to talk about this. Could we talk, next Thursday at 10? Oh yeah, let me look, I'm clear. And before you know it, you look and you're like, when am I going to actually get any work done? I've got nothing but meetings lined, calls and all this stuff lined up. And so I've also got to where I put it in my calendar. I just block the time out and I don't schedule over. And that way I can execute on the things that we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's finding time to do good work is key to really making the pandemic, for all intents and purposes, work for you.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of stuff set up for the future just because we were forced to look at things a different way on so many levels. And I try to take a positive outlook, even though, it's hard. Days are hard,
Yeah. It's funny. I find, maybe you can find this too, is that I can have a pile, I always have a pile of energy and I probably have much of the same work ethic as you do. But during this COVID era, there are certain times where you just shut down. And I've never had that before, where it's just sort of like, okay, I need to walk away from this, or, you watch the news for a little bit too long and it's just like, okay, I'm done for the night now. It's just sort of like, it's hard you get really motivated. And then all of a sudden you hit a wall sometimes where you feel this frustration where you don't really know how to get through the wall because we haven't been here before. Right.
It's so true. In terms of news and just digesting so what's on all the feeds and all that, man, I hit my limit about July and June or August, and I can't watch it. I'm very selective about what I'm looking at, that's not, either for to educate me further or to enjoy in terms of being intentional about it. So it's hard to control those things, and so I can't tell you how many phone calls and stuff I'm on and people start talking about stuff, or they'll call me up and say, did you see that email? And I'm like, no, I hadn't looked at it yet.
Yeah.
Cause a lot of people, they treat email like it's a conversation. And I'm like, buddy, I don't walk out to the mailbox every 5 minutes, looking for a next letter, or wait on the mailman to come by. It's email, so I try to take a point of view of that. But yeah, it's you get to where you need to walk away, you need a break. Sometimes, it's just the years of playing music, I've got a little tinnitus too. And when I get stressed, it gets louder inside my head.
Yeah.
And so I have to mitigate that a bit. That the thing that I think I almost feel silly saying this because I felt like it was a silly thing for the longest period of time, but I got turned around on it, is meditation, like really learning to do proper meditation. Actually, Lindsay L., who's a Canadian artist, turned me on to Headspace a couple of years ago. She got me a 1-year subscription as a Christmas present. Man, I was pretty religious for the year, and then I paid for my own second year this past year, and we'll pay for another. It's for me being able to just just stop everything and try to learn how to turn that off, even if it's every morning for 10 to 20 to 30 minutes, or if it's I find 15 minutes during the day. If I get stressed out or something, I just I need to chill out, and I either go for a walk or work out or whatever. But I can do that, and I wouldn't really do that if I were in an office. If I was working where other people would be like, "What the hell are you doing, man? You're sitting there with your eyes shut for 30 minutes. What's going on?" I'm focusing on my breathing. It's like it wouldn't fly in a lot of circumstances. So it's good to be here where I can kind of find a private space and just take a minute and then get back at it, and I have a much more clear head.
Yeah. It's funny. I actually think it's possible we might have met if you were with Lindsay. Did you come to Lindsay? It was the Ontario Country Music Awards, just on the outskirts of Toronto.
Yeah, the CCMAs,
Yeah, but
CCMAs?
Not the CCMA, that's the Canadian one. There was the Ontario one.
No, I did not come to the Ontario one.
Okay.
I think she had Calgary. She's part of the Calgary Awards, but that's Alberta.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't think I came to those.
It's funny. I came back. I was backstage, and I've never met Lindsay, but I've followed her on Instagram and stuff, and she's got that stuff down to a T.
Oh yeah, she's great.
Yeah. So, it's the same type of thing. You feel like you kind of know that person because you've seen a bunch of their personal stuff on Instagram, and I just came around to the green room, and she was like, bam, I just ran into her, and I was like, oh. It's the first time in my life that I didn't know what to say. It was just like, oh, I've never been kind of shocked by anybody, but I just didn't expect to see her. And and I can't remember what I said, but I remember walking away, going like, I can't believe I just said that. When those moments where you just get something stupid, and I'm thinking,
oh, trust me, yeah.
Oh gosh.
I have that all the time. Like, she's fantastic, and what you see is what you get. She is, I think, I love that. I don't know where I heard it. It might've been Maya Angelou that said it. People may not remember what you say, but they'll remember how you make them feel. Yeah. And she epitomizes that. I think she's, just a great person. I think she's great.
Yeah. She works hard. Yeah, just constantly at it. But let's go back, and we'll talk about what's going on now a bit later on. But
sure.
Let's talk about how you got started. And you got started as a player really in the industry first before you got into anything that you're doing now.
Yeah.
So what did you play?
I'm a guitar player.
Guitar player?
I made my living for 15 years professionally as a guitar player. And I added tour management to that along the way, just because you make extra money, and I enjoyed, putting things together, plans together. So, I kind of did that combination of things, playing guitar, but also being a tour manager, also maybe putting together, being a band leader, pulling bands together for certain things, production, just making sure artist rehearsals were going well. I actually did, after my touring career, right at the end of it, the way I got into the business side of music was I was playing guitar and being the accompanist, but also helping manage production and putting bands together for new acts on labels. But I was being hired by the labels to do that, not the artist. So, but I graduated with a degree in classical music. Studied classical guitar. After college, I moved. I was born and raised in West Virginia. After college, I moved out to Los Angeles, California, and I lived out there about 6 years. Worked out. I went to Musicians Institute. Did a year there, then I ended up working at that place for a while, and then I worked for Mike Post, who does music for film and TV. He did L.A. Law, Rockford Files back in the day. He's the guy that wrote the theme to Law and Order. That chunk, all that. Yeah, he's a big deal. Yeah. Yeah, he was, and I was like the low man on the totem pole at his music editing company. But my theory was the way Mike worked. He would write the theme to a TV show. And then he had a stable of composers that would write the music. They would do variations on themes, and they'd write the incidental music, and then they would do the recording of it, and they kind of did everything. Yeah. And that was kind of the way into that business. I thought I wanted to write for film and TV. I thought that's kind of where I was going with that. Yeah. But I was playing around live in LA, like coffee houses, and I had a band out there, and I was just, doing that all at the same time. And I became friends with Herb Peterson from the Desert Rose Band. Oh yeah. And his wife Libby worked at Interlock Music Edit, which was one of the places that was Mike owned that I worked at. Yeah. And I remember one year I couldn't come back to West Virginia for Christmas, and I was just 23, 24 years old, and they had me over for Christmas, and man, it was like for Christmas, their guest other than me was Lee Sklar, the bass player with the beard that played in Phil Collins's band. That guy. Oh yeah. I got to drink scotch and smoke cigars with Herb Peterson and Lee Sklar, and it was one of the greatest Christmases ever, man. It was amazing just hearing the stories that they would tell. Lee's got fantastic stories. Oh, he's incredible, man. He's incredible. And then like another time like that, it was like a Saturday. I live by myself, and I'm just kind of in this ratty apartment by myself and in Hollywood. And I got a call from Herb, and he said, "Hey, my new band, we're gonna do just a garage practice at my house. If you want to come over and just hang out and listen." I'm like, "Yeah, I'd love that." And so I went over, and it was Herb, Chris Hillman, Bill Bryson, I want to say Wyatt Rice. It was what became the Laurel Canyon Ramblers.
Oh yeah.
But they were not. They were just jamming in Herb's garage.
Yeah.
And they had a microphone hanging from the ceiling, and they were standing around old style bluegrass, just singing into this one mic. And he had an old couch on the corner of his garage. And I sat over there, drank a 12-pack of beer, and watched them and listened. And I could not have been happier than to sit there all afternoon and just listen to those guys play bluegrass. It's so good, man. Just God, it's so good. And so anyway, Herb, when I decided to move to Nashville, he wrote me like a letter of recommendation and gave me like a list of contacts. People from different management companies, Jim Ed Norman was at the time the head of Warner Brothers, and a few different people. And I went and met with a couple of folks, but really just kind of talked to them. I didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't. I came to Nashville because my father had gotten ill, and I wanted to be closer to my mother and father, and so I could go back and forth up to West Virginia easily, and then just play music. So I ended up working at this place called Soundcheck, which was like, in LA, it's 3E is the sister to Soundcheck. Soundcheck was owned by this guy named Bob Thompson, and it was one of the silent partners was Glenn Frey of the Eagles. And so there was a lot of really well-known people coming through that place, and I was working there. And then, so after about a year there, I got the job as a stage manager with Tanya Tucker, and I was stage manager for about 6 months, and then they fired the entire band except for one guy, and the one guy they kept was the bass player, and Keith Horn. And Keith knew that I played. I was playing downtown and just jamming with folks, and we had all played music. And he asked me if I wanted to play acoustic guitar in the band, and I'm like, hell yeah, I want to play acoustic. Yeah, for sure. So I got hired on like that into the band. Yeah. And then that one, and there was always turnover a lot because, her and her father were notorious for keeping one or two people and firing everybody else every winter after touring was over. And then they try to hire everybody back in February, March. Yeah. And I happened to be one of the people they would keep. And that turned into, becoming band leader, then becoming band leader, tour manager. And then I went from working with her, I worked with Leroy Parnell, which was, Leroy was incredible. He still is an incredible guitar player. And more than that, a musicologist when it comes to understanding Western swing and Texas blues, and really a connoisseur of great blues music. And we used to set up late hours of the night on the bus, and he'd show me how to play Bob Wills tunes and stuff like that. It was freaking great, man. Yeah. And then worked with Shelley Wright, who was artist at the time, had a couple of number ones then. Yeah. And then I was just working with all kinds of different people, just a few pickup gigs here or there. I'd go out on the road for a weekend with one artist, and then I'd go out with another one the next weekend. Just depends on where the work was. Very mercenary at that point in my life. And then I got the gig doing these radio tours with new artists, and I got hired by Arista Records, Arista Nashville, to do the first one I did. Actually, it was RCA. I got hired by RCA first, and I did a radio tour with a girl named Coley McCabe. Then and I went right out of that one into another one, Arista Records. Then I did one for Atlantic, and it was like that became like a little cottage business for me. It was like, and it was great because you traveled on a bus during the day. Yeah. All I took was my acoustic guitar. We'd go into a station in the morning and play and visit, and then we get back on the bus, drive to a town, do a lunchtime thing, drive to a town. We'd play at the station, do a really fancy dinner that they always invited me to at night, and then go to bed. So you had like regular hours. It wasn't like you weren't sleeping on the bus overnight. Yeah. So, man, it was a cush gig. And I was doing that. And then the opportunity, I got to know, I think over the 2 years or so that I did that, I had done 350 some odd radio station visits. And so it got to be where when I would go into the radio stations, the program directors would already know me from when I'd been there before, And so the promotion guys, radio promotion guys took note of that. And I got offered the opportunity to come and do an interview at Warner Brothers, Nashville. Yeah. And I thought, I'm like, why not? I was getting where I didn't want to be on the road and be that guy who used to be playing in the band all the time, but now he was driving the bus and selling the T-shirts.
Yeah.
And had like a long old pony, on ponytail, it's all gray and shit. And
Yeah.
talking about, I remember when I was out with so-and-so, I don't want to be that guy. I wanted to move on. I had done everything I wanted to do. I'd been on Letterman, Leno, I'd been around the world. I'd done it. It had not happened the way that I thought it would, or that I wanted it to.
Yeah.
Which was, I thought it was going to be with my own band, but the way it happened. Then when I sat back and looked at it, I'm like, I kind of did all the stuff that when I was on that dirt road drinking beer with my buddies and listening to the rock station and we'd talk about what we wanted to do. If you look at it a different way, I actually accomplished those things.
Yeah.
And so at that point, it's kind of made peace with myself. And okay, I said, all right, I'm done with that part of my life. I can figure out something else. And it all coincided that I got the chance to go interview. So at that point, and how this is with musicians, I was 37 years old at the time, and I didn't have a resume. I'd never had one. I'd never done a job interview. You know what I mean? It's like I'd always been just know people or get asked or something like that. And so I got asked, would you like to interview with Warner Brothers? And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. And when is it? Well, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And I'm like, oh shit, I don't know how to do a resume. What? And so I thought, okay, if I do a resume, it's just going to be the same thing anybody else does. And I'll just use like a Microsoft template and try to write it myself. And instead, I just did a top 10 list of reasons they should hire me, like a David Letterman top 10 kind of thing, and I just counted down. And there were things like, I can find liquor in a dry county in Virginia at 2:00 in the morning. I can do, all of those things, it was all like things that were true and that had happened to me, but they were just these crazy things, just more like to make them laugh, but also there's truth in all of it,
Yeah.
And that I think got their attention, and they asked me back to a second interview and then a third interview. And then they wanted me to come back and talk to the guy who was running the label in Nashville at the time was Jim Ed Norman, who knew her Peterson. And I still had the letter from her and all of that.
Oh, wow.
And I took it with me. And I think that's what got me the gig.
Yeah.
Because he was like, holy shit, he made the connection. And so then, they put me in a room in like a closet with a telephone and gave me a list of radio stations and told me to start calling them. Then I tried to get these songs added to them. And I had no idea what I was doing. If I'm talking too much, just tell me to stop. But no. I know I'm kind of rambling. But I didn't know what I was doing. But I was watching. There was a TV show on HBO at the time called K Street. Mm-hmm. It was produced by George Clooney, and it was about political consultants in Washington, and it was done like a documentary. Although the politicians that they were working with were fictional, or fictitious, but everything they were doing was what they would do to win a presidential race or a congressional race or whatever it was, or lobby for a bill or whatever it was. And I watched like the first episode and I'm like, man, that's just like radio promotion. It's the same thing. And it's like the candidate is the artist or the bill is the artist. And you have to talk people into putting your artist song on radio, And so I watched that TV show with the notepad and I took notes on everything that they did. And I applied those exact tactics to doing radio promotion. And the first song I worked was a song called Wild West Show by Big and Rich. Oh, and that was their first single. Yeah. And the first ad date that we had, I had closed 75% of my region, which nobody did that. I didn't know if it was good or not. Yeah. But the guys, the national director of promotion and the VP and the GM of the label were flipping out that I come in there and smoked it, and it was all because I was like, oh, I could do this and this and this, but I did get my hand slapped because I was giving away the farm to get that done. Oh yeah. But they didn't tell me not to do that. They just said, we need you to get the ads. And I got the ads, man, but I spent about that first 6 months there just working a lot with John and Kenny, John Rich and Kenny Alphen from Big and Rich. And
yeah.
we became friends. We're still friends. And it was like this weird first experience for all of us, that year. And spent a year there. Then I got hired away from there to work at Arista Arista Records when it was under the RCA label group. And then that became part of, they merged with BMG, and it was Sony or they merged with Sony. Sony bought out RCA. Then Sony merged with BMG.
Right.
And then BMG called it a day, and it became Sony Music Nashville. And I was there until it became Sony Music Nashville. And I spent 2 years as I spent a year as the Midwest manager of promotion. Then I was made the national director of promotion for Arista Records. My first gig on that was working. We signed Carrie Underwood and was getting Carrie's stuff out the door.
Yeah,
that was great. That was a great experience. Was on the jet to go sign Carrie and then start her thing. So it was part of all those conversations. That was exciting.
Yeah.
And then after a couple of years of that, after 2 years as national director of promotion, they made me the vice president of B&A Records, which is now Columbia Records Nashville. Okay. Same label, but they brought back the old name, and so that was a heck of an experience working with Joe Galani and Butch Waugh and Skip Bishop and all those guys there, all my bosses there. And then at late 2011, I just decided, well, I've kind of done what I wanted to do here. What's next, And I didn't really know that I was going to get into management per se. I just knew that I didn't want to be there anymore. And so I told him, I said, look, I'm gonna, it's time for me to go. I need to change. I need a change in my life. I need to do something different.
Yeah.
And I love all you guys, but I'm not going to go somewhere else, and I'm not going to go to another record label. Yeah. I'm not going to go compete. But I'm not going to do this. And I don't know what I'm going to do. So it was a really amicable parting of the ways. They asked me to stay on through the end of the year to help with any transition. And I did. And that was great. It was fun. And then when I left there, I kind of fell into management by accident and had my own company for about 6 months. And then I got a call to come meet with Corn Capshaw, and they asked me to come on board at Red Light. I could bring the guy I was working with me, but they wanted me to work on the Tim McGraw management team. Mm-hmm. And then I've been at Red Light since then. It's 8 years now, I guess.
Wow. So it's pretty interesting, because if you go back, there's probably about, if you want to consider them all jobs, there's probably about 10, 15, 20 different jobs along the way.
Oh man. Yeah. I was at a show 8 or 9 years ago, 10 years ago. I was at it was a Carrie Underwood show, and I during the day I would just do my work, but I like to be at the venue. I always, because I came up through like the crew guys. Yeah. I was like a crew guy that got a chance to be a player, and then I became a player, but I was still kind of a crew guy. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, and so those are the guys that I just feel the most comfortable with. I feel more comfortable with the road crew, than I do with other musicians. Other musicians get on my nerves like nobody's business. They just, I have no patience for laziness, and there's so much laziness in it, And so a lot of times I would, I hang out more with the crew, when I was a Tanya man at one point, me and the steel player and our production manager, we had a bus driver. Tanya owned her own buses, and we had a band bus that was a retrofitted 1971 Eagle. Yeah. And this was into 1996. So that's an old ass bus, So, and we were scared to death with these bus drivers they were hiring that we were going to just end up in a ditch some night, And so we went to the business manager and said, look, you pay the three of us what you would pay a driver. So the outlay of cash is not going to be any different. The three of us will split the driving shifts into thirds, and we'll split the money into thirds. And we ended up driving. So I would drive the bus part of the time. So, but anyway, I was sitting in the back of the arena. It was in Lansing, Michigan. And I was watching them set up everything. And I thought to myself, I literally figured out that I had done every single job there was except for rigging lights. I've never rigged lights. Yeah. But I've done every other job I had done. And so, a lot of jobs along the way.
Let me skip back a second. The steel player, That wasn't Mike Holder, was it?
It was Mike Holder.
Oh, no way.
100%. Mike Holder.
Mike's
His bald ass
a really good friend of mine.
I love that man. He
Oh,
is
so
a
do I.
fine man. Yeah. So Mike Holder and Matt, oh my God, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank. He produces Lee Bryce's records now. I'll think of it in a minute.
Yeah.
But the three of us were the ones that drove bus. But that's when Mike got into driving buses.
Yeah.
It was because of us doing that. Yeah.
Well, Mike was kind of like my number one steel guitar player here in my studio for
He's great.
quite a while. Yeah, he's great. Yeah. And he's a real perfectionist. And I remember when he made the move to Nashville, and we were chatting about it a lot, and he's going to do it. And then, you know, someone moves away, you touch every once in a while. Then next thing I knew, I'm driving bus part-time. And then, oh, that's awesome. And, so super awesome guy. I was going to ask you earlier when you mentioned,
I'm sorry. He's one of the neatest, most well put together people I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like no matter what he's wearing, he looks it fits him perfectly. And he's like the James Bond of the country music business or something. I don't know. He's a guy who could be out in the ocean, walk out, and he would be in a dry tuxedo. He
just sent me an email like maybe 3 weeks ago. He was playing steel on a friend's project. He wanted me to listen to see what the steel sounded like. And so he was happy. He was kind of, he says, I'm getting back into playing again. So
that's good. That's good. Mike's a good dude, man.
Yeah, definitely. So going back on a couple other things too. So when you're a promotion guy selling a record, a single, what do you think made you good at that? What's the trick in that? What makes you good at that job?
I think there's you have to have, anybody that's good at it has to have like a natural kind of affinity for talking to people, just talking, and just enjoying conversation with other people. That's like number one thing. The thing, but for me, the thing that the way that I made that work for me internally was I would always find something about the record that I was working that I loved. It might be only the drum track, or I might just, some records, it was like, okay, I love the snare sound. Everything else is shit, but I love the snare sound. Or, something, I would always find something about it that I could talk about and be honest and passionate about.
Yeah.
And I would, in my conversations, I could always be truthful in how I felt about something, or why I needed to get it done, or why it was good for the radio station to do it. Always the key for me was finding the thing about how you approach that is true. And that way it keeps you from getting into trouble. It keeps you from, it allows you to keep your integrity and feel good about yourself after it's over with, because there are a lot of opportunities that doesn't go that way.
Yeah.
But for me, it was about finding what's the true thing about this that I can talk passionately about. And trust me, there were some challenges. I remember that Kid Rock song about his kid Happy Meal or whatever. It was terrible. It was just terrible.
Yeah.
And, I found, I think it might've been the drum track or something in there that I liked. And, you just really got to find the thing that you like about it so that you can speak passionately and honestly about it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about moving into management? Actually, no, I was going to ask you something else before we get into that. As far as radio promotion, nowadays compared to even 10, 15 years ago, with streaming and all those things that are happening now. I know you're not in that game, but you would know about it. What do you feel someone promoting a single now, what would the differences be? Obviously, you probably don't have as many people to talk to as...
Well, no, it's still very much, look, anybody that tells you they're not paying attention to radio and streaming and all that stuff they're lying to you. And any artist that says it isn't important, they're lying as well. I'm very aware of radio promotion and how it's done. Hell, I can get on and look at BDS and Media Base, and I will do my math and do my numbers to find out how long it's going to take a song to move 6 spaces, or when do we think we're going to get a number 1, or when do we think it's going to be top 10. I still can do I keep those skills sharpened.
Yeah.
And I still call radio guys that I know. There's still probably, 60, 75 guys that I will call semi-regularly every 3 months or so, just to stay in touch, mostly around shows. If I got a show going into their town, I'll call them and just say, hey, and invite them out. And most of the times it's a different conversation, because I can just be friendly, and I'm not trying to do anything other than bring value to their station. Hey, I'm going to give you some more tickets. I want to make sure your people are taken care of. And so it's important to keep those relationships strong. In terms of the streaming world, I think that I said it a long time ago that each label should have a promotion team that works streaming, and they should work all aspects of it.
Yeah.
Now, I know that people have tried to do that, and the streaming companies, they push back on that. Like, they don't want you to have these personal relations. They want you to talk to a person who's their music person, or who's the country person, or the whatever.
Yeah.
And I just try to find every way in the world to get around that. And just, if you have a relationship with somebody, have a relationship with somebody. And it helps. It does help. It helps to get you in the door. Yeah. The thing about streaming is the data is there. So after a while, you can't, it's either working or it's not.
Yeah.
And now, but the thing you have to do is make sure that a song is given every opportunity to work. So if it's given every opportunity to work and the numbers aren't coming back, then you need to move on, because that's not going to work, And whereas if you weren't in the streaming world, if it was more radio, you could talk people into staying on something longer.
Yeah.
The human factor played a much bigger piece of that. Now and in terms of radio pushing back on trying to get songs added, it gives them more places to point to hide from, to be able to say no. No comes very easy to a program director. God love them. I love them. They're good people, but man, they love to say the word no, and they'll say it in the nicest way. A lot of times they give you the Nashville no, where they just never return a phone call or anything till it's over with. Yeah. But it's that data can be used as it can be used as a knife to cut you loose. You got to be careful what you point to, and it's much harder to have. It's much harder to have a real hit these days that isn't a real hit.
Yeah.
It's very hard to prop them up when they're not really happening.
Yeah, makes sense. So management, did you find that much of a transition, or has it just felt like a steady progression forward for you? Obviously, a lot of that is relationships, talking, all those things that you've learned over the years. It just kind of rolls itself right into management. I'm sure it had its, challenges and different things to figure out, but what did you find the biggest change when you moved into management?
Anytime, like when I was a national director, when I was a regional promotion manager, at Arista, and I'd look at the national and I go, I could do that job. I don't know why they're not doing it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you get the job and you sit in the seat and you're like, holy crap, this is way harder than I thought it was going to be, but you assimilate. And then when I went from being a national to being the vice president, I thought I knew what it was going to be, but I had no idea. I couldn't have been prepared for it, because there's things that you do when you're at that level of an executive that you just don't tell anybody below. You're not sharing that information. Yeah. And you have to manage up as well as down. There's so many pieces of that puzzle that are, that you can't be prepared for. You just have to kind of get thrown in, and then you learn it, you sink or swim. Joe Galani told me one time, it takes about 2 years on average for somebody, like one year of learning your job, learning how to do what you're doing, what you've been asked to do. And then another year of actually doing it to gain the experience in order to make really solid decisions and move forward. And then after 2 years, on average, people are ready for a promotion or to move on or something else to happen, if they're that type of a person. You don't want to get stagnant. You don't want to get stuck. Oh, I've been doing this for 30 years of radio promotion and I've just worked in this one thing. And, it's like that in any business though, really. And I just, it was weird. The record label stuff really worked well for me in terms of my career. It just fit what I was naturally, I had an affinity for, that I feel like I did well. I felt very confident about doing it because it just seemed really simple to me, And so, but man, the learning curve at each stage of growth was huge. And then I remember and I've actually apologized. You know who Larry Fitzgerald is? He's a manager at Fitzgerald Heartland.
Mm-hmm.
I used to get in the biggest arguments with Larry because he just say, I would just could count on it. I could go to him 3 different times and he would absolutely tell me no. And if I had a good argument, the 4th time I could get a yes. But he was just such a bear to deal with. And I used to get so pissed off because he was like, he was frustrating because he was just keeping me from doing my job. And I didn't understand why, why he would say no to things and why he would do what he did. And, he was a manager for at the time, Kelly Pickler, who was on my roster at DNA.
Yeah.
And after I left the label, I'd been in management 1 year. I saw Larry out somewhere and I came up and I just straight up apologized. I said, man, I am sorry. I had no idea. I had no idea how hard being a manager of an active and engaged and forward-moving artist would be. I had no idea all of the balls that will come at you, all the ways you're pulled in so many different directions. It's a challenge. It's just, let me say it this way. There are managers who have incredible artists that write hit songs and boom, they're out the door. And a lot of times those managers are good because their artist is doing really well and has hits and is making a lot of money touring.
Yeah.
And it looks like the manager's a genius, but all they're doing is hanging on for dear life and praying to God they don't fuck something up.
Yeah.
I hope to God I don't say yes to the wrong thing and no to the wrong thing. And they just got to, now there are people who rise to the occasion and they can make good decisions, and they move and they learn and they grow and they get better. There are others who are just hanging on. Mm-hmm. And people think they're great, and I'm not seeing nothing out of them. Okay. And then there's other people who are good managers because they've had to grind it out with artists, and they made the artists what they are.
Yeah.
And that I've always would rather be that kind of. Don't get me wrong. I want the success. Yeah. I want those big acts, but it's so much more satisfying when you help somebody go from nothing to seeing their first #1 or getting them on their first big tour, and then seeing the record sales and seeing the offers go from $5,000 a night to $25,000 or $30,000 a night to 40. I mean, those are huge. And or getting, like I also work with Craig Morgan. I have a co-manager on Craig's name's Gaines Sturdivant. And Gaines and I, Craig's career, for all intents and purposes, was really stagnant. And in the last 5-6 years, we've really done a lot with him, and it's very proud to be able to do that. And you have numbers to measure that growth. Yeah. So, but the challenge is it's just, you can't be prepared for it. I mean, you're talking to Pennzoil about a $4 million deal on some kind of car oil, promotion, or you're talking to, with Craig, we're helping him with the outdoor TV show. And I went bear hunting with him, for God's sakes, and you're helping with that production. You're helping negotiate with the network TV people. It's all over the place. We just did a major book deal for him, so that's, book publishing is different animal. Yeah. So you're learning that, with technology that grows and is just ever changing, every 6 months, there's something else you've got to be doing. Artist needs to be present, got to be present to win, right? Like the old raffle ticket says. And so understanding these new technologies is a constant. You constantly have to be educating yourself if you want to stay on the edge of things. Having the right relationships and cultivating those that's a whole other part of it. Trying to win awards is a whole other thing, and it's just, and not only that, but being international, growing a band, not only domestically, but growing them internationally and worldwide, and, trying to build it a territory at a time. Man, that's not easy, and then you hit that learning curve again this year with COVID. We started a live stream promotion company, for all intents, for lack of a better way to put it. It's, with the Cadillac 3, we started Country Fuzz Presents, and we did that with a new kind of a startup live stream platform called Moment House. And we produced 41 live streams between August 1st and November 15th. And that, I mean, hell, I didn't know what I thought we had everything taken care of until the morning we were making the announcement. And then the guy who was going to provide all the cameras and gears and produce it said he couldn't do it. He got an offer for something else and couldn't blame him. He had to take this offer it was for Fox or something. He had to go do it. And I'm like, I called Neil, the drummer, up in like 3, and I said, dude, let's just buy the cameras ourselves. We'll figure it out. It can't be that hard. We'll figure it out. Yeah. We'll hire people to run. And so we turned that into a thing. And in like, a week and a half later, we were doing shows and putting them on the internet. And so, I mean, it's just there's constantly stuff coming at you from all different places at all hours of the day and night. And it's pretty insane, man. I was not prepared for the controlled chaos it is to be a manager with active clients. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, because you really are making decisions that really completely affect another person's life.
Everything.
And it's a complete extension of that person. And having that trust and relationship between the artist and the management is super important, because you want, as an artist, you want, I've worked with a lot of management on a bunch of different things, and even a booking side of things. And you just know sometimes that you might present something that maybe it's not quite in the wheelhouse, but maybe there's a workaround. In the back of my mind, it's like, is this even getting to the artist? You know what I mean? It's like it kind of comes to this wall, and it's sort of like a penetration wall. It's around the artist, and then you always wonder with some managers, it's like, you have to be smart to say yes, no, and you can't let the artist know absolutely everything that's going on. Because,
I think
you should as much as you can. But I've run into lots of times where you just know that feeling that, I don't think this got presented to who it should have got presented to, and getting a fair shake.
I know
of
what
things.
you're saying.
Yeah.
No, hey, listen, it happens to other managers, because they'll want to work with another act, and they'll go to the act's management, and the management gives them that you get the same feeling. I mean, I've gotten it just in the last 6 months. It's happened all the time. But it's okay.
Yeah.
My point of view is your job as a manager is to advise and counsel. Yeah. Right. And then represent. The artist needs to hear of every opportunity. Some little stuff. I mean, what they're going to, if you know them well enough, there's either a reason they don't want to do it or they do want to do it.
Yeah.
There's a reason that they should not do it or should do it. And those are parameters that would be set ahead of time with planning. And, you want to work everything, the totality of it all needs to add up to growth and a certain goal, or where, you want to get where you're going. So the little things, I think management can make a decision on that stuff, because the parameters should be able to guide you. There shouldn't be doubt as to what it should be. That said, artists should know what was asked or what was presented. So, even at the very least, if they're ever somewhere where the person is to ask about it, they're aware of it. You don't want anybody to be surprised.
Yeah.
On the big things, those are always a phone call and a discussion. Without fail, there's no excuse for that. Any major decision that is a binding situation or a commitment of any sort should be it should be a detailed discussion with your client, and that goes both ways, because artists will get things themselves. And a lot of times I have to remind them, you've got to let us know, because if we're working on an overall plan, and artists are approached by people directly a lot, if they don't direct it back to us, we can't keep the plan together. You can't keep things organized. You can't keep things in order, because all of a sudden you'll find out something's happening you had no idea was going to happen. And it may knock down 4 or 5 dominoes you've got set up. So there's that transparency and communication has to be ongoing in order for it to really work the way it should.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the transition that you've had to do since we've in this COVID era, and obviously it's going to be with us for a little while yet. What are the things that you seen that you figured that worked, and maybe worked at the beginning, doesn't work now, and how do you project into 5 months, 6 months, and a year from now when you're not 100% sure. Maybe we should, talk a little bit about those
Sure.
type of things.
I think in general, number one, don't make any decisions out of fear. I've never done that. So if it is what it is, and we have to, and you try to, we assumed that we weren't going to tour the rest of the year. We assumed all of that was going to go away. You could see it just going. I'm talking about 2020 now.
Yeah.
By April, I had a plan for each of my acts, depending upon what stage of their career they're in, or what is right for them. There's no one size fits all, so you have to treat each artist situation as its own unique situation and apply that your thinking to it, and with those parameters. So with the Cadillac 3, I mean, man, we did a lot. Everything that we put in place, though, are things that when touring comes back, there'll be add-ons to the touring. Like the Country Fuzz Presents, branding a live streaming thing that they curate and host. Well, the first thing we did was we started, and we did this before the pandemic hit, but we had started Country Fuzz Radio. And we started doing it on streaming radio, Big Machine Label Group streaming radio platform. Yeah. And Scott Morshida was kind enough to just say, man, absolutely, go ahead, get after it, So that's roughly a 1 hour radio program every week where the guys curate the music. They talk about why they picked the songs. They do it, all three of them together. Sometimes they have guests, sometimes they don't. But now we have a year, there's 45 weeks of radio shows in there. Yeah. So now that, and my idea with that all along was to create this radio thing, give them enough time to practice so they get good at it, and then take that, and I've got plenty of material to put like a EPK together with that, an air check, and then maybe try to get it syndicated or brought to Apple or brought to Sirius or whatever. Those are things you will look to for 2021. Yeah. So 2020 is working towards the future. Same principle with the Country Fuzz Presents live streaming brand. So we incorporated that and bought the camera gear, bought the streaming gear, did all of that, and we use it as a place to help developing and acts who have great careers, give them a place where we made a partnership. First partnership was with the Basement in Nashville. This second partnership and current partnership is with the Exit Inn in Nashville. Mm-hmm. And we set up a way where everybody can win when we stream shows from those clubs. Also helps the clubs, helps the artists. We've done 46 of those shows now. And we also have raised $25,000 to feed families through Nashville. I have to think of the organization. But anyway, it amounts to 100,000 meals provided for families in Middle Tennessee. Wow. So we attached that to it. Mm-hmm. And those are all things. Now that it paid for itself. But what happens is, we're planning on doing a festival, down the line, and this helps tell the story of why that'll happen. And so these things go out to the atmosphere. And I think that when the band starts touring again, those live streams, we'll be streaming our show live in tandem with the live concert. So we'll be able to monetize that. We'll sell tickets to the show that we're at, and tickets to this one that's going out over the internet, And so we can add a layer of income to the band in 2021. The guys, we put out a second record. We put out the Country Fuzz album in February. We put out the Tabasco and Sweet Tea record November, and now so we got 2 albums out in a year. And so if you can't grow touring, then grow artistically. Put another record out, and we got so much press and heat around that record. It was a departure. It was a different thing. It was sent a signal to the industry. They're still the coolest band in Nashville. There's some badasses, man. And that Tabasco Sweet Tea record shows it. And they're the coolest band out there now. They just rock. They're rocked so hard, and they're funky and interesting and insightful and smart at the same time. And I just really admire them as artists, as recording artists. So that's, they're what we started a fan club with them that's paying them that. You work on the things that you can't work on. Yeah. Our e-commerce game got much, like 70% better because, okay, let's focus on e-commerce, more than all these are things you should be doing all the time. But with the volume coming in, it's really hard to do that,
Yeah.
So we were able to level up areas that needed to be leveled up and turn them into income streams that we didn't have before.
Yeah.
Craig, we did some live streaming stuff with him. He did not want to do a paid thing, at least yet. It's just his thing. He's just different. But we work on a book. We put out, another record. There's a lot of things with him. My artist, Christian Bush. I mean, man, that guy's, he's working on a second musical.
Wow.
We've got a musical that we're talking about staging virtually. That he co-wrote, and we're talking about, and we're recording all that. He's produced, 5-6 records. We released he had a huge catalog from being in the band Billy Pilgrim to Sugarland to his solo stuff, and a new band he's got out now called Dark Water, which is a freaking great band. So there was a lot of catalog product there that hadn't seen the light of day, or new versions of it. So we kind of made a pact that we're going to try to get all of this out the door during the year, because one thing about streaming is if your songs are on a hard drive in your bedroom, they're not making you any money.
Right.
But if you get them out and people can enjoy them, it may trickle a little bit, but the totality of a big catalog can be worth something, and who knows what might get discovered and get put on a TV show or, whatever. So I think singularly, there was over 50 songs that we released between May and the end of September.
Wow.
But there was 3, 4, 5 record albums, four albums. And we've got, more stuff scheduled for 21. So those are the things you do. He did some really lucrative streaming things that paid him really well. It's funny. I felt like I was overwhelmed with the things that were coming across about streaming in March, April, and May. It was ridiculous, man. It's like every third email was a new streaming company. And I was to the point where I would get mad. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I don't need another streaming. There's plenty, enough. But what I did was I kind of gathered them all on one thing, and I just spent the time and studied, okay, what would work? What's the problem? And I did a couple of things. One that was with a food blogger. It had nothing to do with music, but the sign-up process didn't work. I thought it was going to be a good thing. And then when I went back and analyzed, we'd only sold like 15 tickets. And I'm like, that's crazy. And when we went back and analyzed, 477 people had opted out at the point where they had to enter all this information. Oh, yeah. And I'm like, okay, so basically because of the pain in the butt it was to sign up, we lost at least, I bet 75% of the sales we would have got, if it had been easier. And that's when I got turned on to Moment House, which is simple. You put in your first name, last name, your email, and a credit card. They send you an email with a link, and you go and watch the show, and that's it. And you don't have to become a member. You don't have, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So the experience of May, June streaming really educated me on what to look for in streaming situation that works. But now that I'm educated more on it and I understand it better, hell, I've even edited video. I never thought I'd ever do that. It's you just
learn
something needed to get done. I'm like, I can learn anything on YouTube, for God's sakes. I'll edit this. You guys will have it tomorrow. Not hard, but it was a really easy edit. Don't get me wrong. But you have to find where you can do things, and then you have to do things that hopefully my goal. And I told all the guys this. I said, my goal for you is if at the end of this, when we can go back to touring and back out in the world gets more normal, your career will have leveled up in some way. There will be a measurable positive difference between where you are now and where you will be then. And it won't make you won't lose any momentum. We'll only gain momentum. And so that's been the mantra for everyone.
It's pretty amazing. That's a lot of people should hear that. And I think there's a lot of people just sitting back waiting.
Can't do that.
No, you got to keep moving forward.
Life will happen to you if you don't happen to it. You got to make things happen. You got to go out and happen to the world, not let the world happen to you. Exactly. Look, you can take a break every now and then. You can say, shit, I got to take a nap. Go take a nap. That's fine. Take a day off. I gave myself one day to be depressed and upset about all the money I lost because of COVID. Yeah. I took one day. I was pissed off all day long. my feelings were hurt. I'm like, oh, what could have been? It's going to be one of my best years ever. And it just went to shit in no time. And so I gave myself one day, and after a 24-hour period, I just said, I'm like, I looked in the mirror and I said, all right, figure it out. Yeah. And so I just started figuring things out, and that's how I handled it.
So what do you think, as far as everybody restarting again, as far as getting out there on the road and touring? Obviously, we don't really foresee for sure when that's going to happen. I think maybe fall everyone's looking forward to, but everyone thought the fall back in March was going to be a thing. Kind of don't know, but how do you think it's going to roll out? Obviously, you just can't open the floodgates and everyone just gets to the start line and hit go. It's going to be a slow ramp up. We got a lot of people in all the industries. We got a lot of musicians that sold all their instruments. We've got tech guys who've gone and worked for Amazon and probably won't want to come back because now they have a nice cushy gig with benefits and all that stuff. How do you see it rolling out?
Listen, I think we need to be optimistic. No reason you shouldn't be optimistic, but I think the realistic look is we'll be lucky if we can do some touring in the summer. We'll be lucky if the fall works. There's so many variables in place.
Yeah.
Will the vaccines come into play the way they're supposed to? Will people, will the humans of the world follow the right protocols and, stay safe? And will that give us time to get the vaccine working for all of us? There's just so many variables with that. Saw an article in the New York Times where Dr. Fauci said that he feels that if everything goes well, they should be open. It was an article with theaters in New York.
Yeah.
And they said, you should be able to be back in theaters in the fall. I think, but that's if everything goes well. I think that's optimistic point of view. I think the reality of the situation is we're going to have some touring in 21. It's not going to be anywhere near where we want it. I think there will be a lot of people dipping their toe in the water here and there, and there'll be different things, and we'll have some tour dates. But if it's a band that does 120 dates in a year, maybe they'll do 30. Yeah. I think that it's going to look like that. But 22 is, I think everybody, like the people who are deep in that game, they're pointing at 2022 and they're setting up 2022 now. Like, we're going to start booking 2022 with my bands. We're going to really plan touring here before the end of the first quarter. We'll start working. Probably in the next 2-3 weeks, we'll start on that. But we have to look ahead. You have to look way ahead. And so I don't feel like the business will even come close to a glimpse of what it was before this hit until we get into 2022.
Yeah. And I even think in the back of my mind, it's going to be even later. I think it's going to take a good 3 years or so to get back to what we think what was. But the problem is still, I think a lot of people are thinking the same as you, 2022. So you've got, bands who maybe tour every other year or this. So now everyone's not played for a couple years or a year and a half or whatever it end up being. It's like everyone's going to want to go out and get going.
Yeah, listen,
that's going to be a tough thing to manage.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, the routing and the there's already holds on stuff for 2 years from now. It's crazy. Yeah. So, but I listen. I think that the activity level will come back 2022.
Yeah.
I don't think the money will come back until 2023.
Yeah.
It's what you do in 2022 will fund fourth quarter 22 into 2023.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to think of it that way. Activity level can come back at the end of Q1 2022, hopefully. But financially, you're not going to see things coming back like they were until you get to 2023. I agree with that. But they're just like, again, there's just so many variables, and it's hard to say. But I feel like that is a realistic time frame. And if it's better and it turns out to be better than that, then hallelujah, hopefully it won't be worse, but I'm praying that it turns out to be quicker than that. But my realistic point of view is activity level 22, financial level will come back 23, and then we'll be on. from there. But
Yeah.
a lot can change in a year, man. I mean, a lot of technology, a lot of opportunities. I think brands are going to start incorporating more music. Gaming is going to start opening up to artists that are not, huge. There's got to be things out there that we can find areas of opportunity that we might not have looked at before.
Yeah. We'll wrap up on a couple more questions. And
Sure.
so during this time, during COVID, what's the biggest lesson you've learned? I know it's a tough question, but.
The biggest, how important hanging with the family has been. I was surprised. I'll use this to illustrate it. I couldn't believe how much maintenance needed to be done on my house after I'd been here about a month, and I was walking around talking to them. I'm like, oh shit, I got to paint that, and that needs to be fixed. And you know what I mean? It's like it's just, and you those little teeny moments that happen throughout a day that you don't notice. Those being aware of those little moments are that's the thing that has just slapped me in the face that I hadn't never crossed my mind really in the last 10 years. It's my son, this last fall was his first freshman semester in college.
Yeah.
And so that I hated that he didn't get to finish his senior year of school the way he should have. I hated that all of those events didn't happen.
Yeah.
I hate that. But man, we spent 2 months hanging out at the house and just doing stuff, just me and him and my wife, the three of us together. And we hadn't done that since before he started school when he was a kid. It was rare, especially when he became a teenager. We didn't, he was always doing something with his friends or whatever. And normally that time, if that were like snow days, he would be over at his buddy's house, whatever. But we were all locked down, forced to stay at home. And like we binge watched The Walking Dead. We played ping pong like nobody's business. We've been getting crazy with Rummy Cube games. I mean, he's a really great guitar player himself. And we'd sit around and play guitar together. And it's just stuff that if I were going to the office every day and if life were normal and I was traveling so much, that wouldn't happen. The year prior, in 2019, I spent 35 days, went around the world. I was gone for 35 days and went all, circumnavigated the globe. And I would much rather spend 35 days here at the house with these guys playing ping pong and goofing off, So the lesson is just how important that time can be if you have the ability to make time for that. That was super important. And then just personally, just in myself, it's like just really putting boundaries on my work life. I got to take a little time for my own mental health every now and then. I think I just never thought about it too much before, but this has made me think about it.
I think that's been big for a lot of people. I think in some ways, going through all this has been really good for a lot of people. I'm obviously really bad for a lot of people as well, but I think there's always whenever low you have, there's always an opposite reaction, right? There's always something on the other side that's really good. Yeah. And it's being able to figure that out on the other end. And I think a lot of people have really looked at their time kind of going, geez, maybe I was on the road too much, or maybe I didn't spend enough time with my family or all those things. And so those things are super important. And those are the things to take away from a time set of looking at all the negative. Let's look at all the positive things that turned around during this time. So,
I agree. I mean, you have to be open to it. I mean, the negative is easy to get to.
Yeah,
you can go negative, and it's really easy. It's a little harder. It takes a little more effort to find what is positive about a situation like this, and really try to open your heart to it and expand your mind with it. And it just takes a little more effort. But it's funny. It's like a snowball. The more you do it, the more speed it gathers going downhill. It gets bigger, and it gets easier to do the more you practice it.
Yeah. We'll wrap up in the question I'd like to ask everybody. Since you've spent a lot of time as a musician on the road and touring all over the place, I always like to ask, is there anywhere in the world that you haven't done a show or performed at or been to and want to do a project at that you haven't done before? Is there a venue, a city, country, a place out there that you said, I really like to do something here?
I would like to take my guitar and do like a little solo acoustic tour of the pubs of the northern part of Scotland.
Oh, cool.
I think, and I would be fine walking between towns. I think it would be just the most fun just to play in these, just like, it looks like someone's living room.
Yeah.
And everybody's just raising hell. And you're just in, and there's like 15, 20 people in there, and and do that, and just go all around Scotland and all the mountains. And I love all that I love that kind of the way that topography, if you will. I love all that. I think that's awesome. I've been to Norway a few times, and I just love it, and it's beautiful. But I haven't been to that part of Scotland. I'd love to go. That's the place where I'd love to go and visit and play, and that I've never been to.
Awesome. So wrapping up, who should we be looking out for coming up, and projects that you're working on that people listening should be seeing and looking out for?
Hey man, you guys should get it. I urge everybody out there to check out the Cadillac 3's record, Tabasco and Sweet Tea. I think it's one of the hippest things that's come out. It's definitely one of the hippest things to come out of Nashville in a long, long time. And I'm not saying that as because of my relationship with those guys. I'm saying that as a music lover. I mean, you know how it is. You rarely like listen to your own stuff that you work on.
Yeah.
You don't wear your own swag, and you don't listen to but I put that record on at least once a week and just crank it. And it's a great record. I would say listen to that. There's a lot of stuff out there. But let me take it a different way. There's an artist named Christian Lopez that I don't work with, but I think I just heard his new record. It's not out yet. It's to be out in March. That's a great record. And it's innovative, and it's cool, and something you can look forward to. Those two things, everybody else is kind of working through other things, but I think that that Tabasco and Sweet Tea record by Cadillac 3 that's a great record to put on, man. You won't be sorry.
I'm going to listen to that tonight. One last little thing I thought might be a neat question for you. Do you think country music is going to come back, like real country music?
I don't think I think it is back. People talk about, well, country music doesn't sound like country. It ain't real country, but what they're doing is they're intellectualizing what they feel like mainstream top 40 country should sound like. The country that gets on the radio. You know what I mean? On mainstream country radio. Well, that's what you're talking about can be found in Americana. It can be found in alt rock. It can be found in AAA. Jason Isbell. You're talking about, those kinds of guys. Mm-hmm. And Brent Cobb, those guys. I've got a young kid I work with named Caleb Lee Hutchinson, and Brent Cobb produced his new record, produced 5 songs on his new record so far, and that'll come out. That's country's dog's breath, as I like to say. Yeah. And there'll be kids like that, because it feels like young kids. If you look at the streaming numbers on a traditional sounding country or new alt country, whatever, the stuff that is new, but it's more traditional sounding. Yeah. Those numbers are really through the roof among 18 to 34 year olds. And even like with Craig Morgan, if you look at his streaming numbers, I mean, he's been around for 20 years, but man, there are young kids. I've talked to kids 20 years old that'll say That's What I Love About Sunday. And that song came out in 2006, and he's so traditional sounding. And and his streaming numbers are huge with 18 to 34 year olds. And so I think it's here now. I think it is back. It's just the titles of the genres, the way people refer to them is changing. Yeah. Like with the Cadillac 3, their record that came out in February, they called it Country Fuzz, because I say it this way: if you say something is Southern rock, it sounds like Southern rock, people instantly think of the 1970s. You think of, the 70s Southern rock bands, Skinner and Molly Hatchet and all that kind of stuff. But if you say Country Fuzz, That's a new thing, right?
Yeah.
But country fuzz really is just Southern rock. The country is Southern and the fuzz is the rock.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a whole new, it's a genre of things, but it's really, it's just a revamp of a way to look at Southern rock.
Yeah.
And I think that country music, the way you're thinking of it, is doing the same thing. It's just called Americana, or it's, it's that kind of thing is happening. So I don't feel like it's ever gone away. I think those guys are, there's a lot of great songs and songwriting and artists in that world now. I'm way into that stuff. I love it. I just feel like it's just a really rich, full body of work that's out there, but you just have to dig a little deeper to find it, and you have to know where to look. And that's my answer to that question, I guess.
It's a great answer. Actually, it's probably the best answer I've heard, because it's it's a truthful answer, and it brings new light into that question, right? Because it's easy just to say, yeah, it's just all crap, or whatever people want to say and label it, but the stuff is out there.
Look, Chris Stapleton is the poster boy for that, right?
Yeah.
Well, Chris Stapleton the guy can't get a hit on the radio. His songs take forever to get the charts, and one of the best teams in radio promotion work his stuff. And I know they are beating people bloody to get those records up the charts, and they won't test, because the audience is a mainstream country audience, and that's not what his stuff is. Yeah. But he gets on the radio because he's so big, and he sells so many tickets, and he's so popular. But really, he is kind of that's the country that you're talking about. It's out there. Yeah. And there are others like Chris. It's going to take a whole other format for those guys to find a place where they can get number one on that, number two, you know what I mean? Yeah. That's another format, The problem is there's just not enough radio stations. I think the Americana reporting list is 16, 17 states. It's not very big.
Yeah.
And non-com radio that plays that music doesn't even have a reporting chart. And AAA, 20-some, 30-some stations. I don't know. It's just, there's not a lot of stations that will report to the chart on there. So you just need a more volume of music out there, and it'll find an audience. But it's out there. It's on Pandora. If you look at the streaming numbers on that's where the streaming numbers really can tell you that something's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Well, it's been an awesome conversation. Just hang on. We'll do a wrap up here, but hope that you have a great year this year. I know sounds like you're full steam ahead, and I love chatting with people like that, because it just actually gives you more inspiration. Sometimes you feel you work hard until you talk to someone who works harder, and it's like, crap, I'm not doing enough.
You know what? Hey, listen, man, I feel that way. I'll talk to 2 or 3 people today, and I'll be, God, man, I really got to get my game together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's someone. It's just like, you think you're tough until you run into somebody tougher, and there's always somebody tougher. There is. Yeah. It's that way with everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks again, and I appreciate it, and I hope everyone really super enjoys this podcast.
I do too. Thank you.
Thanks.